Hello everyone, Hammad here. Welcome to my channel, Cloud with Hammad, DIY Cloud Learning to Inspire. For today, our cloud series is with Azure, in which I will be migrating an on-premises Windows 2012 server. It will be in VHD format, installed on an hypervisor services, in which I will install IaaS and migrate this on-premises server to Azure Cloud via Azure service called Azure Site Recovery, which is also known as ASR. During the deployment, I will be going back and forth to configure on-premises devices and also prepare Azure Site Recovery Service and a key vault so that I can successfully migrate the on-premises server into one of my Azure Cloud subscription. But before we do that, if you are new to my channel, please subscribe, like, and share with friends. I would really appreciate it. Now, without further ado, let's go to my notes. Alright guys, welcome to my notes. This actually is broken down into two parts. First part will actually prep on-prem resource group, and then we'll install the VNet and then storage, and then in that resource group we'll deploy a VM, Windows 2016 server. We'll actually use a nested virtualization machine size, so I think it's DS v3, I think v3, v4. We'll look into that as well, and then we'll go ahead and install Hyper-V service and role via server manager, and then we'll actually download 2008 or 2012 R2 nested virtualization VHD, and that will, once we install the Hyper-V, will actually run a machine like a server on there, and that in that server we'll actually go ahead and we'll actually install IaaS. Once we do that, while we are doing all this, we'll actually go into deploy another resource group, would be a Azure Site Recovery resource group. In that we'll actually have a storage. I think in that we'll actually have a resource group, and then we'll also have storage, VNet, and then in that we'll actually basically deploy a ASR, Azure Site Recovery. Well, in that we'll actually go to prepare our infrastructure. While we do that, we actually create a vault. In that vault, we'll actually have an on-prem tool which will copy the link and go in this Windows 2016 machine, and then we'll also copy the key, that is the cert, to register this machine with the key vault. Once that is done, we'll actually replicate. Once we enable the replication, while we register, this vault will automatically pick up a VM from our on-prem, and then we'll replicate that. Once that is protected, we'll do a test failover. Once that is completed, we'll actually create a jump box to test out whether the IaaS is working on this transition. Once we verify that the machine is completely tested and it's been backed up, what we'll do is we'll do a complete failover. Once that is completely done, we'll actually attach a public PIP, that means that an IP address to the NIC card, and NSGs. Will make sure that the complete migration is done, and managed disk is also migrated. That will be end of our lab. So without further delay, let's go to our lab and start deploying services. Alright guys, so I'm already logged into my Azure portal. First thing we'll actually create, what we'll do is I'll actually use this one first. We'll just go create on-prem, prepare on-prem stuff, and then we'll also, while we do that, we'll actually prepare some of the Azure on the cloud. It means that Azure Site Recovery stuff. So let's create a resource group first, in which we will create our on-prem server subscription. I would say just use this, whatever it is, RG on-prem, and we'll create this in our ECUS. So we'll go next and we'll create the resource group. So once that is done, we will actually go into this resource group, and then we will create a virtual network. So in order for us to create a virtual network, we'll just go here. I can just type in v virtual network, create, create VNet on-prem. We'll use the resource group subscription, and this is also going to be in East US as the resource group. So click review. Actually, let's go back here for a second. We'll make sure I have a CIDR log done, and that's good. Next, security, we know to disable, create, and then we'll create a virtual network. Once that is done, then we'll create a storage on-prem. So we will go back here, create, all the way here. East US, next. Don't worry about all those stuff. I have a video if you want to ever see it for any storage and everything, so you can go up there, leave it as public endpoint. No need to worry about protection, soft flopped and everything. Click next, hit create. Now once that is done, we will actually create an on-prem VM, which is Windows 2016 server. So we'll come back here. While that's deploying, we'll go back here onto the VM, create a VM. So while we do that, I want to show you one more thing. So we will be installing this VM, and on the top of that VM we will be doing a hypervisor, that is Hyper-V. We will have a 2012 server install on the VHD file on it. So for that, Azure has specified a size that your machine needs to be, that is machine family size. So Microsoft Azure nested virtualization web server will be with new DV3 or EV3 VM machine. So it's for least nested virtualization, meaning you can simply have an Hyper-V VM inside an Azure VM. So for that, we need to make sure that we select the right virtual machine size. So if I drop down here, select the resource group, and I would say on-prem VM, and then on top we want to make sure we use 2016, and then server size, it says DV3 or EV3, so we'll just go back here, we'll say DV3 DV3. We can use this one as well, 16 gig. We don't have to, but that's fine. We'll just actually use whatever, DV3, and then password. And then we go ahead and hit, want to make sure you have existing license, confirm, next, and then go ahead, networking. Actually, let's go back here for a second, and we want to make sure we use the right size. Like, we don't need premium, this is a lab, so we'll keep it at standard SSD, sorry. And then we want to make sure we have an NSG created, and then next. We won't worry about that, and then review and create. Hit create. All right, so that is deploying. In the meantime, let's go back to here for our cheat sheet here. We already have deployed this, so we'll X out this one. Once the machine deployed, we're going to log into our 2016 server, and then we'll install a Hyper-V VM on this machine. While this deploys, I will be right looking into this one here for a second, and then we can also create this here as well. So let's create another resource group. So I will create a resource group, and this is the place where we will actually this is the place where we'll migrate all the data. So let's say Azure migrated VM East US, next, create. We'll also create a storage up here. This one actually is on-prem, this is on cloud, so I would just leave it this, and I would say storage for cloud, East US, next. We won't worry about all the other stuff for now. Validation pass. We'll also create a VNet and prepare the infrastructure, means that we need to actually do this first. So let's come up here, create a VNet. Use this resource group. We need to create a resource group in that VNet Azure cloud. Next, review and create. This is done. So once this is done, we're going to go back here for a second, and then we'll come here. This is done. Okay, so go back to home. We already have deployed a machine, so now we need to log into this machine. So I want to make sure that I have picked up the right subscription. This is the one that we created. This would be considered as an on-prem machine that we will be using. So we'll RDP into this machine. Okay, and yes, okay, and then this machine is logging in. Alright guys, so we already logged into the VM. This is actually the VM or on-premises server 2016. First thing what we'll do is we'll actually download, so let's do google.com. And then over here we need to download we need to make sure we download this. So let's go here for a second and copy this location. I'll leave the link there as well in the video. Type in, hit enter. We'll go to 2012 VHD file. Just type in company size 1, whatever you want to select, email, and then work phone, region United States, and then hit continue, and then you would download. This will actually go into our download folder. In the meantime, while this is happening, we will actually go back to our server manager, and then we will install Hyper-V here for a second. So go ahead, hit manage, add enroll, click next, remote. This is just like IIS, next. And then over here you can see this is in Hyper-V. So you click here, you hit add, next. Everything stays the same. Next. I want to pick up an Ethernet too so that we can have an IP address. Click next. And then we want to make sure we want to use security credential. So it would be like a send and receive live migration of VM. We will hit yes, allow. This is the location for default hard drive location. Next. And then, we want to check in that, restart the destination server automatically if required. Yes. I'm going to hit install, but if I do that, it will automatically restart the machine, and then the download will stop. So in the meantime, I'll just wait for this download to finish first, and then we'll hit the next. All right, sorry. So this is almost done. It's going to go into our download folder, and once this is complete, we will go to our server manager and install Hyper-V, and then it will automatically restart. And then once we get there, we'll come to our server manager. It will install. All right, guys, so it restarted. So I'm going to connect again, and I will log back into our server manager in a few seconds here. Alright guys, so I'm logged back into like my server manager on that on-premises machine. Hyper-V is installed. The next step is to install a VM, the server, image that we downloaded. So for that, we just need to go here, tool, and then click on to Hyper-V manager. And then once we get here, click on new machine, and then click next. I would say on-prem Win server, and then I would go next. Generation 1 is fine. 2048, click next. We'll select virtual adapter, next. And for location, remember we downloaded the file, so we're going to go to download, select this one. This is the VHD file, that will be the server file. Click next, and then click finish. So once that is happening, it will use this. So we'll hit connect, and then we will hit start. So it will be connecting to our on-prem. This is a hypervisor. We consider this going to be an on-prem machine. So this will load up, and then we will install IIS on top of this machine. And then once that is done, we will once this is done, we will start initiating our Azure site recovery process, so that we can move this machine into cloud. This is considered to be an on-prem machine. So this is going to load up. Usually takes a good 3-4 minutes, so I'm just going to leave it like this. Just do the registration. Next. Accept the license. So we're going to log into this machine. It's going to do its setup. We're going to log into Server Manager, install IaaS, so that we verify once we move to cloud, we can connect to the same IaaS onto the cloud. So we'll let it load, and then we'll get right back up to moving stuff into our cloud. Also, I wanted to show you that this is actually the machine that we installed initially, and then we installed hypervisor on top of it, and then after that we installed a VM 2012, I think, and then on that we're logging in, and we want to make sure we configure this. So for that, few things that I need to do is, just for this session, we want to make sure we disable the IE off. Okay. Also, I think we should just disable the firewall. This is not a practice, this is just a lab. So I am okay with doing that, but I would avoid doing that in production environment. Click OK. And then also, since let me create another. So let's go here, and then I would just we will go ahead and install IaaS. So for that, we just need to go here. I'm just going to go through the process here. All right, while IaaS installing, I'm going to install another user. I'll actually have a test admin here as well, so that it won't be any issues. So I would come back here, local user and group, user, create a new user. I would say test admin. You can do whatever you like in terms of ID. Password, I'm just going to say password never expires, and I'll just use and I would go here and I would create, and the user is set up here. So once that is done, I'll close this here, and then I want to make sure that IaaS is installed. Go back to the dashboard, and then actually not this one, I would go into Hyper-V one, and it restarted because we probably installed IaaS here. So I actually accidentally X'd out here. So once this is done, click here, and I want to make sure 169.254.113. So I would do a quick notepad just to save the IP, just to check. This is a private IP network, so it won't be opened up to internet 169.254.113.145. So I will just copy this to see whether the IaaS is working. Start an Explorer, close this, and then we are actually, I'll just move here for a second. One six nine dot 254 dot 13145. make sure that it's running. Okay, so I think that should work. Let me see one more time here. I'll close this. Server manager, close, and then actually 113. So that's why. Okay, go back here. I would just so IS is working. That's internal private IP. All right, so once this is done, we're just going to minimize this for a second, close this. We are done here. We're just going to go back to our on-prem, and then we'll go back to our home. And then now the next step is to, this is done, so we will create a recovery vault. Up here you can type in recovery vault or recover service. Click here. I will create. I'll pick up on-prem. Actually, let's do on cloud. I would say vault to migrate, East US, review, create. Okay, so once this is deployed, we'll actually review the entire, well, it's already done so quickly, so let's go quickly here. So we are now into our vault. This is also called, it can also be used for backup, and it can also be used for replication. So you can do backup and replicate. As you can see, this is the landing page. We are going to be using site recovery. If you want to do if you want to see backup, I have a video for backup as well. I use the same same service for backup, so I can show you. I use the same recovery vault. There's a video on top of there too, so you can see that. Okay, so go back here, and then we'll click on site recovery. Since we are doing Hyper-V virtual machine, so we will use this one. We will prepare infrastructure. First step is to prepare infrastructure. So we will click here. We actually created the vault. Now we will create prepare infrastructure. For that, we'll just hit here, and we'll go back here. For that, we just need to make sure we have, it says that, hey, you don't want to download and run deployment planner. For this test lab, you don't have to, but I would say in production, you should download this planner, run it, so it's going to go in and discover stuff, your machines, and come back with the detail. So I would say I have done it already. I will click next. And then you are not doing virtual machine manager, you are using Hyper-V, so you would say no. And then over there there is no name of this Hyper-V site, so I would say Hyper-V VM site, and just give the name. It is going to create the site. Once it does that, it says successfully created the site, no server found. So for that, we need to basically add Hyper-V first. Once we click on this window opens up, and it says that, you know, you're running Windows in 2012, which we already did. And then we would download this installer for Windows Azure Site Recovery Provider. So we would copy this link location and also download a file. Once we click on this one, it's going to open up a key this is the key that opens up. We need to make sure we import this into our VM on premises or on premises network. So I would for now just copy this. I would save it at my document. So let's do download migration, and I would save it, close this, and then I would go back here on my VM. I would minimize this, and then this is actually onto the server. So I would go back onto downloading this first, and it's going to download that recovery. It's done. Open folder. Also, let's go back to that, minimize this for a second, and then while this is happening, this actually is going to happen till we register the machine. Go back to download migration, and this is the file we just had for, this is this key, the cert. So copy this, close this, go back here, and then for cert we will just drop it out here into our desktop. You can create a folder, or you can have a storage drive. You can have that. For now, I'm just leaving it here. I would not recommend you to do that. Okay, once that is done, click here, and I would install recovery software, run. So make sure you have update on. Next, where it's going to install, and installing the agent. All right, so installation is done. You can hit finish, or you can hit register. So once you hit register, it's going to open up this vault setting. What we need to do is we need to provide the key file, which is what we got here when we downloaded from here. This is the place where we downloaded, and we moved it into our VM. Once we do that, we browse it. I put it on the desktop. I will copy this, I will select this, and this should pick up all the details: subscription, vault name, Hyper-V site name. Click next, and then without proxy server, and then it will actually go ahead and fetch the certificate. It will create, and then it will configure the recovery registration. Now you can see it's registered the server. The server was registered in Azure Site Recovery Vault. I would hit finish. Once that is done, so this means that this VM, the on-prem VM, is now showing up on the cloud because of that vault, recovery vault. So now this is actually looking for that machine. So what I would do is I would go back here, and I would click OK, and then go back to prepare infrastructure. Once I do that, I want to make sure that I have done it. Click next, and now it should show up that VM after this process. Now you can see that on-premise VM connected. So this is the machine on-premises VM, which is like I consider this as a machine that is on-premises, name on-prem, and now it is connected onto our cloud vault. So I would click next. Once I do that, I want to make sure which resource manager I want to move to. AP5, this is subscription resource manager. There's two subscription to virtual network. You can just leave it the way it is. Click next. And then replication policy. This is the first time you're replicating. I would click create new, and then I would give the name replication. You should have actually in the previous this window, I should have actually created another resource group and then moved everything in there for make it look more cleaner, but I guess I did not. So but I would say go ahead and create another folder, another resource group, or another storage, and then another VNet, and then go from there. Right now it's showing up already in there. It says two of them and two virtual machine. Click next. Policy, policy, and then source Hyper-V, target Azure, every 5 minutes it's going to go and check for recovery point, Azure source and target. The 15-minute option has been retired to favor of 5 minutes option, Hyper-V, and then immediately click OK, and it will create a replication policy. Okay, the policy is done. Click next and then hit prepare. When that is done, I will go back here and hit enable replication. Once I hit enable replication, I want to make sure it says site, and then where do you want to migrate? I would say on the cloud. Resource manager already there. Storage account, you can pick any one. I would pick the cloud one. Already a VNet there for the cloud and the default subnet. Now we already have a VM. It says virtual machine selection. There are a list of VM that you can select. For now we have just one, which is on-prem Win server. Click next. And this on-prem Win server is this one, on-prem Win server. And then I want to make sure on-prem Win server, Windows, click next, and then replication copy frequency 5 minutes, recovery point 2 hour, app consistent snapshot 1 hour, encryption off, VMS virtual machine manager setting is not configured. Click next, and then we would hit enable replication. Once I hit enable replication, it's going to start replicating. It's going to first, so you can see all the identify target, this and that. So once this is done, this is another location, site recovery job. So if I click go back here, and go back to recovery vault. While this is happening, I want to show you something else. Go into the vault, close this blade. So we were here inside recovery. All the recovery jobs comes into replicate. You can have up here replicated item, and then there is a recovery. So recovery job, site recovery job, you click here, you can see starting to do progress, the one that was showing up here. This will come up, and then once this is complete, we'll go to site recovery replicated item. So if you click here, you can see that it is enable protection, it's happening. So you can run your machine on manage this. So we need to make sure we change the manage this, but once we completely failover, it is right now unmanaged hard disk. So once this is done, we will come back and we'll go and do the process to test the failover. Completed. Click here, replication item. So this is already synchronizing, so we click here. So the backup is synchronizing for now. We'll just wait till it completes all the detail. Once this is happening, it will show that we can test failover, and then once you verify logging into a test machine, it will come up onto test VM. We'll log into that and check our IAS. Once that is done, we'll fail over here, and then all the detail about this is property. If you click on property, it tells you that what's the synchronized 0%, location, Hyper-V, VM, policy, ID, VM ID, and then this is one protected, failover, not happened, computer network, all about the hard drive. It's going to show up. Initial synchronizer for virtual machine is in progress. You can change the configuration setting and initial. So we're going to wait for this to finish. There's this unmanaged hard drive here, and it's taking place right now. So we'll wait. Once this is done, we will go back and do a test failover. So this will show up automatically. So once this is done, it's still doing the replication. and then 0% synchronized. Also, it shows the way the picture. Infrastructure view. This is on-premises Hyper-V machine. This is Azure, and both of them have a storage. You can do a table view as well, or diagram view. Also, if I click here for a second, and you can see that, you know, while it was just still synchronizing, it is saying that waiting for recovery point. This is actually, you need to restart your VM here. So I would just click on start, shut down, and restart. Once you do that, this should go away eventually, the error message onto the recovery point. Click here, and then this should, like, once its recovery point, is going to start building up from there. So click here, property, and I'm going to log back into our IS server. Alright, so I'm already logged into our Hyper-V. I'm going to minimize this, and I will go back here. Click here. This should say waiting for recovery, so it's going to come back up to protected in a bit. Now you can see the machine is now protected. So if I go back here, I can see that it says that machine is Hyper-V, configuring the replication and Hyper-V, and then everything is all set. Click here. So once we move the complete machine, we will actually change the managed disk right now to yes, so that machine can be independently owned. Right now the machine is unmanaged. You can see it's protected, 40 GB. Click here, and then once this is done, the failovers, we're going to do a test failover. So we'll wait for replication to take place in a second here. Go back here, recovery vault, and then site recovery. The last action would be manage recovery plan, and then we will create a recovery plan. Okay. Migrate source from Hyper-V to Azure, and then we want to make sure to a resource manager, not classic. Select where do you want to move this one, click OK, and then create. So this is creating a recovery plan. Successful. Done. Now we go back to Vault. Replication item. Now you can see these options: planned failover, and test failover. So first thing what we're going to do is we're going to check out the test failover. So once I hit test failover, it's going to give us an option to where to fail over the test. Now it tells us failover direction to what's the recovery point. Latest is this one, and then where do you want to move it to? I would say Azure Cloud, and then it says it recommend that for test failover you use a network different from production. This is a lab, so we're just going to leave it like this, but I would highly recommend you to do the following instructions here. Click OK, and that, you know, it says now replication has started, in progress. So this is going to take some time. I'm just going to show you one more thing here. So I click here, and then replication is actually going to happen in our cloud one. So if I go here, taking time to load. Progress, it's happening now, starting test failover. So that's going to happen, but I want to show you something. So if I go back here in our resource group, we are moving everything into our cloud resource group, but this is a test failover. So everything which I had will open up in our test failover. So selecting subscription here, and then cloud, actually, yeah, migrated VM, and it's going to start creating these temp NSGs, temp VNet. So, and then eventually it will move the VM that we just did a backup. So in the meantime, this is still progressing, and we'll wait for it to move everything over. While this is taking place, I think I'm going to create another VM as a jump box for now to test out the connectivity, actually test out the test VM. The migration did successfully. So I will create a VM. I will try to log into with the local IP, because this machine wouldn't have a public IP. So what I'll do is I'll actually jump box to that private IP of that VM that will create. So we'll just do jump box. You don't have to do this. I usually try to make it so that I can jump box in it to a private IP. So I'm going to do this and come back in a second here. So the test failover prereq has been tested, successful. Now it's starting to test failover, and then later on it will create a test virtual machine on that resource group on the cloud, and then we'll try to test out the machine to see if it's working or not. We'll already have started creating a jump box. So we will use that jump box to log into that VM to see into a private VM, private IP first. Starting test over failed successful. It took 9 minutes. Now it is creating a virtual machine. Once that is done, we'll move it to start virtual machine. All right, so all done. Virtual machine is done. This is a test failover. It's already done. So now it took 9 minutes to do a failover. So if I click on X out from here, now if I go here onto our resource group, you'll see a tag under name of test that is created for anything that we did on a test failover. So if I go onto the cloud one here, and then you can see I created a jump box. I won't worry about this right now, but if I scroll down here, it should say test, a machine that was created under the name of test. So I can actually click here, and then you can see it doesn't have a public IP, but it has a private IP. So it means the machine has a private IP. I would copy this, and I will also click on Actually, let's do this. Well, why don't we just, we don't have an NSG, we don't have a public IP. So for now, we'll just click on to create some resource in here so that we can connect this machine. So go back here. I say N network security group. Click here. I would actually, we already have an NSG, but we'll create another one just for the sake of clarity here. VM, click review, create, and then we will also create a public IP. Doesn't have those things, so I will have to attach it to the network card. So create, IPv4 standard, I would say on-prem VM PIP -PIP, and then I don't have to give the name. Resource group, I would say in here, I don't need to do redundant. Click create, and it will create a public IP. Once it's created, I would associate to a network interface, which is actually this one, on-prem Win server. This is says test, if you see here, and click OK. IP address is associated. Now you can see there's a public IP. Go back here for a second, and I would go back into virtual machine. This is the machine that is the test machine. Close this blade, go to network, and then you can see there's a public IP here, but we don't have NSG assigned to it. So I would click on here, and I will hit network security group, and I would use Azure Migrate VM. I will use this one. Yeah, this one, migrated. And then I would save. It's done. IP configuration, I would enable the IP forwarding. We'll use this IP, and I would hit save. Alright, so I actually added two rules. One is 3389, which is RDP, and then also added an HTTP 80 so that we can view our IaaS, the one that we migrated into test VM. So if I added this in here, so if I go back to my resource group, and once I do that, log into my cloud resource group, not on-prem, I would go to my test machine. This is the VM virtual machine, and then I can remote into this test machine, or I can just use like Jumpbox to remote in, or you can use this IP 4014. And so I copy this and I put this onto here. So this is going to show that, you know, our IIS, the one that we installed in our VM, it's now working just fine. So, you know, you can see that the test has successfully failed over to the new machine, to the cloud. So now once this is done, we're just going to go back here to our resource group, and then all the, so once we did the test over, just want you to understand this, once we did the test over, it created all this test, and then test. So it now we need to clean up. So if I go back to my what do you call vault, now in the vault we go to replicate site recovery, replicated item, click here. So now the failover was successful. So if I click here, it shows that, you know, most recent recovery points, and then property. Now it says status cleanup test failover pending because verified. And then so we go back here in general, and we would hit cleanup test failover, and we say tested. Testing is complete. Delete test failover virtual machine. Click here. Click OK. So it's going to go into our virtual machine, which is this one, and it's going to go ahead and start cleaning up this VM, the Hyper-V machine into the system. So we'll wait, minimize this. And then we'll wait for it. So this actually has started, so it's in progress. So now once I go back to, let's say if I go back to the resource group and go to this cloud one, now the failover test completed, we verified the IIS is working, so it should stop working eventually. But once this is still happening, I will refresh it, and you can see all these test will go away eventually. So we'll wait for it to show up, to basically clean up a little bit. So you can see the IIS starting to spin because it's starting to clean up. There is nothing. And then this is completed. We go back here, and I would refresh. And then you can see all the test stuff is like the VM is gone. I would refresh, and it will slowly start to remove all this. Once this is completed, click here, close this, and then I would go back to my vault. Again, I would go back to replicated item, click here. It says that successful failover happened, no issues. We already did the test. Now we will do a recovery. Before we do that, we want to make sure that, you know, our disk, the one that is listed up here, this is right now unmanaged disk. So we need to basically change it to managed disk so that we can eventually read write on it. So if I click here and I edit, you can change specification, change it to whatever availability set, and manage yes. And it says that failed back from Azure to on-premises, not supported virtual machine running in Azure with managed disk. Set use managed disk, yes, which I did. only if intend to migrate this machine to Azure, which that's what we are doing. And then this is where we verify that which VNet we need to use, and then all the details, and that's it. I would save it. Configuration is being updated. Done. Go back here, and I would hit failover. Once I hit failover, this is the final failover. Now it says failback, same thing what we discussed. I understand from on-premises it's not supported, so we want to make sure that shut down virtual machine, latest update, backup, click OK, and then you can see the failover have starting, and now we're gonna just wait for this to slowly complete the replication. Took 1 minute to shut down the virtual machine, which this one, you can see the virtual machine is shut down, which is the open on-prem server. I would minimize this, and then now starting to fail over. So now it will create a VM onto this one here. So if I refresh it, it just starts to create a ASR temp NIC, and then it will also create a VM. This is ASR VM, ASG, NSG, and then East US. So we're gonna go back here, and we'll wait for this to come up again. All right, so it is successfully done. It took 9 minutes to do a failover, and this was the final failover. So started the virtual machine. Now if we go back to home, and we will go back to resource group first. I want to show you something different. So, and then obviously we are in the cloud here. Close this blade, and then you can see there is a hard drive that got open, hard drive that got run, and then you have on-prem network adapter card, Win server. This is the on-prem Win server that we migrated. So if I look up here, that is on-prem Win server. So this is the machine that was migrated up here. So if I click here, now we need to make sure we do the same step by adding the I would say public IP, NSG. So I will go here and networking. So let's go back to first, let's go back here. Network interface card. I would go here and I would associate. Actually, let's do this here. Let's go back here for a second. NSG. I would attach this one. Save. Resource group. This is the one that we created earlier. We're gonna go back here. Go back here. Associate. And then we'll attach it to WinServe, this one. Click OK. Public IP is there. Now we're going to go back here. Source manager. All there. Now if I do this here again, there you go. Now it's supposed to be working just fine. So you can see we have successfully migrated an on-prem machine to our cloud. So to recap, we created a VM and we created a Hyper-V, installed 2018 server, 2012 server, and we did the replication. So actually, let's do this here quickly. Go back here, and then so we downloaded the tool, and then we also registered the ASR. Replication I did, failover we did, and we created a jump box, which we really didn't need it to, because we added it and then we did the failover. So I guess we completed all of our settings. Hyper-V we did, VHD actually we did. I'm gonna leave the link here as well, and then IIS was installed as well. All right, so all the exercise was completed. Refresh, and then now that's about it for our tutorial for today. I'm gonna just go ahead and hit the resource delete, and it should take care of all the information and all the stuff that was created. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting migration technique. Hopefully I will come up with another migration from AWS to Azure or Azure to AWS in next couple of weeks. Look forward to that, and until next time, you have yourself a great day. I'm an icon, man. And my girl about a 10. I should fuck her in a bed.